let's talk about, I saw 187 with his typical BCB in there saying, giving the Brock chance. Let's talk a little bit about Brock Purdy, man, because I think that there's some mixed reviews on his performance. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that game, and not try to remember in the moment as well, because again, I don't want anything in hindsight. And if your opinion changed, that's okay too. But if it did, give us, hey, in the game, I thought the performance was this. After going back and watching, I now think it's this. Or, what, maybe it was consistent the whole way through. What were your opinions on his performance in this game? Because like I said, it really is a mixed review right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he would have continued playing like he did in the first half, in the second half, it would have been really bad, right? I mean, he didn't have a great first half. If we're being real here, nobody really on the Niners had a great first half, honestly speaking.
Yeah, it's not
So
just
yeah, I
him.
mean, yeah, it wasn't just him. And then we saw the interception. I'm like, here we go. But it's really that second half turned it around for me. And in the game, Brock Purdy was 20 for 31, 267 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 51 yards rushing, 318 total yards. But in the second half, 13 of 16, 174 yards, one touchdown, 132.8 passer rating, three scrambles for 52 yards. Really, that second half was just absolutely elite by Brock Purdy. So that second half, obviously, biggest comeback in NFC Championship history, I believe. I mean, it's just amazing. Like what I saw from Brock is just how calm he is under whatever the situation is. He's the same calm dude. I love that he was taking shots and giving Ayuk chances, opportunities to make plays. I mean, there was the one down the sideline. It was he turned into the corner. Ayuk turned into the corner on that one and had to break that up. But like I told Grant yesterday, those kinds of passes don't bother me. If it's single coverage, Brandon Ayuk versus whoever, just throw it up. Give Brandon Ayuk an opportunity to make a play. It doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, it was a little deep, a little too far on that one. Same with the one where, people say it was a PI. Maybe it was. Looked like it could have been a little bit. Bounced off the defender's face mask. Ayuk made the play. But both of those plays have one thing in common: is single coverage. He throws it up, lets them make a play, and that's something we didn't get to see under Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo would not throw deep hardly ever, and if he did, it's because his guy was wide open, and that's the only time he would throw it. And if you look at teams across the NFL, especially like who are going to be playing in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes all the time, if it's one-on-one, his best receiver, he's going to throw it up and give him an opportunity. And I love that about Brock. He does that all the time. Now, the last thing, and I'll get off my platform here, but Brock Purdy running the ball in that second half was the difference. Like, I mean, there's a lot of difference makers in this game, but that was the difference. I just loved his heart and his grit, and just how he's able to make plays with both his arm and with his legs. It's just a remarkable game by Brock Purdy, by the 49ers in general, and I loved his performance.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And even if they had lost that game, I would have loved the performance. I think, again, I think a lot of people tie performances to wins. And I feel like a lot of people would have felt maybe differently about his performance. Like, let's say that last play, not even picked. Let's just say it fell incomplete, the Ayuk throw. But everything else stayed the same and they came up short a little bit. I feel like a lot of people would have really bagged that performance. And some people still are. To me, there is no perfection. Like there's not perfection. Perfection rarely happens. Especially in the playoffs, it doesn't happen. You're not going to be perfect. With the chance to go to the Super Bowl, you're going to put the ball in harm's way from time to time. And there was, sure, you can point to 3 or 4 throws where he put the ball in harm's way. But it's all about what you said, which is willing to take the chances. I would rather somebody go out and die on their shield or their sword versus just playing it tight to the vest and going out that way. And wondering, like, what if I would have uncorked that ball? What if I would have taken this chance deep down the field? What if I would have scrambled there and instead I checked down or threw the ball away or what have you, or took the sack? There's so many things that can happen in those scenarios that leave you wondering, what if those balls had been picked or fallen incomplete or what have you, I still would have liked the performance because of exactly what you said, which is he was willing to try and willing to take the chance. Now, you look at it, his running, it absolutely was a difference in that game. It was a huge difference in that game. And that is something that has been there for a long time. He just hasn't utilized it. And much like Patrick Mahomes will utilize running really in the playoffs. When you watch him during the regular season, he barely runs, just like Brock has barely ran. But once it gets to the playoffs, he has that mobility and he will run a lot more. Maybe that's something that Brock will incorporate as his career progresses throughout the regular season. You're not going to get a lot of rushing attempts. He'll run here or there. But really, when you get to the postseason, he's going to add that bag to his game a little bit and take his game up an extra notch. Personally, I don't know where the discourse was on his performance. Maybe it was because I was in the stadium and I was kind of just feeling it and they won and whatever. But there wasn't a time where I looked at David, or there was a couple people that were behind me that we were chatting the whole time, that we looked at each other and we're like, okay, like, come on, Brock, like, clean it up. I didn't tweet out anything negative about Brock throughout the game. Like, it wasn't perfect, and there were times in the first half where it's like, okay, yeah, I guess you could kind of bag on things, but no playoff performance is perfect. And I think this thought of perfection, or this thought that these players, these quarterbacks can't have flaws or make mistakes is completely asinine. And again, they get highlighted more in a loss. A lot of people talk about Josh Allen's performance in Buffalo. He did all the great things he needed to do in that game. They came up short. So now all of a sudden he can't do it. Well, if the 49ers had come up short, then that would have been the narrative around Brock. And I just think it would have been unfair because he did everything he needed to do, in my opinion, to try to win that game. And if they didn't win, then that wouldn't have been his fault. It just wouldn't have been.
Yeah, I noticed something very casual about a lot of fans, and in all sports, right? It happens in basketball, happens in football. You could, play, like, you can play the same game, right? And let's say, in football, for instance, field goal makes the kick, wins the game for your team. That quarterback played amazing. It was a phenomenal game, right? That same exact game, same exact play, same exact stats. If the field goal is missed and they lose, now the quarterback didn't do enough, right? So a lot of fans, it's just like 1 or 2 points difference is the determination of whether that quarterback totally sucked or was amazing, right? It's just very casual way of observing the game. But also to the point of Brock Purdy taking shots, you especially want him doing it in this situation when you're down by 17, right? Like, if you're up by 17, maybe you want to be a little bit more cautious and protect the lead.
Sure.
You're down by 17. You got to take these shots. So, I thought
agree.
Brock, that was one of my favorite games from Brock, if not the favorite game I've ever seen Brock play. And, a lot of people are still surprised about his ability to scramble, but I'm like, did you guys watch the Bengals game? Like, he was able to do it then too. So he has that ability, and I like to see him keep taking those opportunities when they exist.
Yeah, and I like that he prefers to play quarterback and throw the ball and tries to keep his eyes downfield. That's the preference. But there are times where you just have to run, especially in the playoffs. And it goes back to the Mahomes thing. Mahomes doesn't do it during the regular season hardly at all. But when the postseason comes around, it's like all of a sudden he's running all over the field. And you're starting to see that a little bit from Brock, where it's like, wow, he only had like 130 something yards rushing in the regular season or whatever it was. And then he has like 45 in this game, so he has a third of that in one game. It's like, well, the ability's there. It's just he's choosing not to do it. And probably for the better. Like, doing it all season long is how you end up getting hurt. You pull something, you take an unnecessary hit, whatever. But when the playoffs are on the line and games are on the line, leave it all out there. And that's what I loved about that performance. And no, that is not me excusing and saying, hey, he didn't throw near picks or he's got to protect the ball better in certain instances. Yes, I all those things can be true. I agree with that. But when I assess the performance as a whole, and again, going back to what I was thinking while I was watching the game, I didn't have an issue with it. I just didn't. I thought it was a great, gutsy performance. That was my personal feelings on it.